He's an IIT Kharagpur.
And Rekha.
He lives in Fisher Island.
No.
Ate our way through IIT together.
Exactly.
No, he taught me how to eat.
But they were partners, I must say that, yeah. They pioneered the multiple dessert.
You looked as senatorial.
3 seconds.
Yeah. Take President Fox's and then
I live locally in Houston.
Okay.
It's easier for me just driving and standing right there.
What discipline were you in?
Certificates, please, thank you.
He's the overall author. It's not this.
You get a separate shot.
What is
Rajan, we just saw him.
You know him?
By the way, we learned to be charmers. Okay, go ahead.
The first picture after you came out of the closet.
three things. First, about my invention, the digital camera technology.
Number 2.
Number 2, I'm going to talk about my transition to movie making. Number 3, what is where Indian cinema is headed.
Not only are the students, then, impressed, and she was really amazed by India has essentially declared IIT Bombay to be the top academic entity in Sanskrit. The text, 4 lines, which is a tenth. You come from the line of the Mayans, much of what we are trying to do in terms of ethno. And I think yoga is also interesting. And we have
Yeah, but the problem is when you say Indian.
Hi, Pradeep.
What are you doing at this end?
Can the present framework of engineering education in India respond to our the need for a new paradigm in regulation, accreditation, and governance, whether in India or abroad? And why is it that though the IIT 70% of those pursuing doctoral programs in the country, is the excellence of the IIT system mainly confined to? And in today's world, can any world student selection, education, and placement record? National Institutes of Technology. Enrollment in higher education as a whole, enrollment in engineering, was a phenomenal 25.
Conference in the city of Houston, and I want to thank and all of you for being here. Houston, this is a great global city, warm and welcoming attitude, and a place where I hope that you will not only
This is backstage. This is truly backstage.
Inside the house. Because of that reason, I'm very proud of this. I have held one and simple business are built by great communities and community private support to really build themselves as world-class institutions. They are great because of you. You who have graduated from there.
On behalf of IIT 2013 conference, please accept our token of appreciation. Let's give her another round.
One, two, three.
But I was impressed by them to chair the program content section. The theme for the conference was already defined. Inspiring innovation for tomorrow and to education and a healthy life. The needs of these 9 billion people would also create a stress nexus. We will need 50% more food, 30% more water, and 50% more energy. So the question
to Manas and to Ramesh, electricity for fun.
Thank you.
There are Shell, BP, Exxon, all defense 4 years back in New Delhi, and there was...
So, yeah, I'm Atul Thakur, and I'm an assistant professor at IIT Patna. And talking about IIT Patna...
Yes, I think when we talk about India, we must suppose that statement is also true. When you say that there is a shortage of faculty that I'm recruiting today, is absolutely a problem. One of the problems that we have today is that there is no continuum. We need a continuum.
Okay. Unless it looks... Thank you. Okay. That's even more than I want.
7th or 8th of January, right? And then PBD
followed. Also gone to Chennai.
And then I have to get to learn hard because we are an open country. So in recent days, of course, is the death of Nelson Mandela. And that was partly a tribute to our democracy, partly really going in a direction that was altogether uncharted. And we did record is quite remarkably established. These are not the things that makes the life of the Congolese people harder and make their productivity of young men and women less. At the same time, I also want the government to be active in areas in the state of blocking public health care.
3 states and 6 states. And with all the hype we have in the newspaper.
Well, you know, I was giving you the Hippocratic analogy. Gujarat is about, in Kerala, 9,000 something, in Gujarat is 6,000 something scared of that. So I think that's it, but that's a separate issue. And same gentleman wrote 24 articles on me. Generally has always been intellectually, industrially, as well as economically and everything, including, I think, in the good delivery of public services within these hours. Bangladesh was 3 years behind India in terms of life expectancy in 1990. India was then 50% ahead of it. Now India is 100% ahead because our growth rate has been faster. But life expectancy, they are now 3 years ahead of us.
So I'd like to thank you, sir, for a really interesting talk. And thank you.
the papers.
It has indeed been an honor to have the opportunity to listen to Professor Sen on behalf of the IIT.
Like India, and now is doing well, and we are one of the beneficiaries of the advance in the education in Mexico, the largest two economies within the South, largest in the world. China is the largest exporter, and that we take foreign investment, tourism into Mexico to run their businesses, but they found down here and becoming very successful.
The 2013 Global IIT Conference Houston is 10 times better than the one in New York. Okay.
He was the Executive Vice President and Chief Product Officer.
Thanks. Thanks. Now, allows you to make some pretty big mistakes, to learn from them very quickly and correct them. And the best technology, and that mashup is what I'm going to talk about today, even though that odd background of mine. I've done products like a product for a company called Compact Computer that did a mashup of musical on a motherboard with, processing and memory. It was incredibly difficult. We thought ISDN was going to be massive bandwidth. Did some work around something called Passport. Pretty interesting concept. Jazz is a mashup of blues, of European orchestral music, and that can frankly change. I guess I'll call it mashable. Everywhere. Personal cloud computing, and the combination of all those things mashed up in a way that you don't really think about. And then apply it to it just happened. It's a trend that looks backwards and applies new technology anymore. We don't have to worry about 10 megabits. You got to have this app. So what this app with client technology and build signal strength through enough. And was hanging out with the Lotus team. Now, the Lotus team, if you can believe this, takes 90 seconds to go. In order to be perceived as a real.
Yeah.
I'm taking it one by one.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. You're shooting a video. How are you?
I'm shooting a video actually. I'm shooting a video.
The king.
Okay.
Hey, listen, you guys. Fantastic.
I'm looking forward.
Wait, one picture. Those were friends of ours. Those are the Fab Four.
I'm missing and hope that my dreams will come away. I'm at home every day. All my loving I will send to you. All my loving, all my loving I will send to you. Please be my guide. I always have to take
Our first speaker for the day is an IIT Kharagpur alumnus on stage.
Often we tend to forget him. Professor Gannisli was a major strategic choice.
So when people start asking questions, you're going to basically see all of them pop up. Everyone you want to ask, right? You don't have to do anything. Just pick one. On stage in 20 minutes.
Why don't you charge it?
I'm going to.
Educational plenary session.
Our keynote speaker last night was Blake Irving. And what did he talk about?
Netflix, for example, right? Now, Netflix came on and it model. That's not why the video stores went out of business. They went out of business because what became the model is streams to a very significant extent is the front, maybe that their functions change very rapidly over time and how they relate. I gave one reason I think this time is different. I think there are a whole bunch of reasons.
a.m. on Saturday in New Delhi. Come to Delhi. And I took a quick poll of all of them as sort of e-alumni. And the Alumni Association of MIT had gotten them all together in the circuits course. They found a staggeringly good improvement in student outcomes. You can use these courses as a new age textbook. So yeah, perfectly. Whether it's a fourth-year student teaching first-year students, or whether it's instructor.
So I guess most of you know how the movement started. It's just with 2 MOOCs, and then Sebastian had 1. And in the last 2 years, we are familiar with the concepts of MOOCs. I thought so a little bit about what we see from them, which we're sending tens of thousands of different emails to different mobile app. If you aren't optimized for the mobile web, then you're really not meeting students where they are with functional courses. And the reason we can't scale even more quickly is just because we're a small organization here that education shouldn't be just for the elite. Education shouldn't be just for the privileged, but that I think education should be a fundamental human right around the world, from the more routine, repetitive parts of teaching, so that they can spend their time.
Colleges, about 5,000. There is another set of 5,000 engineering colleges are affiliated to hardly 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 people come. Whereas what they have to study for are the standard patterns. Expect that the examinations are proctored, otherwise they will not. Activity that happens in a classroom or in a college, which is centered around the local teacher.
Delivering the sort of basic course content through resources, human resources, and those things, and people come out and work in teams. Well, this gives us a tremendous opportunity to shift our resources rather than sitting on their own in the back of the class. Whether it's sort of networking, access to 4,000 some institutions, 4,500 institutions of higher education in the U.S.
Oh, sorry.
Data generated by the scientific advances in the last 3 decades, including some of the biggest challenges in medicine today. Cerner is one of the leaders, is well positioned to talk about the emergence and evolution of big data in healthcare and medicine.
In a different perspective. I come from India, talking of not being able to learn, and the parents don't know anything, and the government say we are doing it. That the productivity of this
small part of our gross product. And yet, the discussions on education are so understanding what IT can bring to them. So the challenge we have in Mexico and the other many doing business in Mexico, contributing to Mexico's, make sure that this invitation for all of you, for Wheels, to make new frontiers of what we can do. So that's a task, that's the challenge.
In the world than the total population of the world. So it's the digital divide as we speak. The smaller nations, these nations, as we are talking to many governments, we find that they're just beginning to understand.
To be a citizen, a humble citizen, next year. Creating wealth is through investment, through entrepreneurship, and through hard working of people every day. That's the way wealth is created, and those are responsible for the jobs that are created, not governments. With this thing in mind, I want to make an invitation to you. Sitting on the back seat anymore. We citizens, we talents, we, like you, brains of the world, we have to take the driver's seat. We have to make sure that we as a whole in the nation conduct where we're going. And I come back again to IIT and those founding fathers and those visionary minds that knew where they were going. They made sure that you got there, and the result is what we have today. So that's what we have to do. Let's assume that responsibility. Let's work together on making governments efficient and making private sector productive.
Thank you, President Francis.
Care access, and yet millions and millions and millions don't have that. We talk about distance attendance with technology to produce.
Gentlemen, thank you on behalf of the IIT 2013 conference. We'd like to, and we'll give them another round of applause. That was truly great.
Start that conversation thinking, but the future's different, and to get them to understand how that. Talk about what's really happening in the world.
The 2013 Global IIT Conference Houston is 10 times better than the one in New York. Okay.
You can say something.
Big thumbs up to Pradeep Anand. Great job, Pradeep.
Good job. Good job, Pradeep. Good job, Pradeep.
Non-IITs are allowed.
Okay, everybody together. Everybody together. Pradeep, good job.
Good job, Mr. Anand.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, this business has grown so rapidly over the last couple of years. Mainly, I just want to end with a few observations here from my side. The interesting thing is that coming the way it has happened over the last. I think all the big Exxons, the Shells of this world, back 10 years ago, they did not see this coming. Everyone in the industry, it is still a huge shock that it was going to be so successful, and we're still paying the price for that today. I think that is sort of what is happening, and it's turning the whole world upside down. It is fascinating. I said it's not that easy to be replicated for the factors I mentioned earlier, to replicate it elsewhere in the world, oil market, or whether it's about the ability these days to move gas.
What we're going to do is that each of the speakers... Complex fracture treatments, however. As we've done more, we've actually got bigger. Typical frac treatments, 3 million gallons of water, 4 million pounds of sand, all pumped at 4,000 gallons a minute. The harder you hit it, the better results, which in some cases may not. There will be several key technical challenges for sustainable unconventional exploitation and production of have-nots. Initially, when we did unconventional development, everybody thought that if you have the shale, it's a source rock, you're a have. You can just several thousand acres. We're learning that the geology varies quite a bit, and this really impacts the productivity of 4 or 5 different types of completions. These so-called sweet spots, or what I've called the haves and the have-nots. This includes cost-effective measurements along while we're drilling. And basically, can we get the same production or improved production by pumping 10% of the fluid? Shale fracs with maybe 3 or 4 trucks. With shale fracs, which will be a huge improvements. There are also future for economic exploration of shale reservoirs is quite bright. I expect the development in the U.S. to continue for many years to help economically tap the shale resources of what I call these have-not, these new techniques. Internationally, exploration and initial appraisal will continue in numerous countries as it is today. Officer of Conoco Phillips from earlier this year, and he's been
the first thing that I want you to remember is this barrels of oil equivalent. That sort of event has only occurred 4 times. That's how big it is. The second point that I'd like you to remember is that if it hadn't been for the oil and gas revolution due to hydraulic fracturing, there would be no US recovery. Okay? This is the industry and that has been driving the jobs growth, the revenue growth for the government, economic growth in GDP, both directly and by the availability of cheap energy. And then the final thing is, if you think about a few players holding about 10% of the resources have added to 25% of the world's energy supply in about 5 years. That's truly remarkable. So, and I think that's an interesting topic about how...
Define it as you see fit. And then part question...
Sustainable in what?
Well, sustainable, let's call it from sustainable. Yeah, you're right, but you know, I'm asking you, yeah, go ahead.
And that the industry has to do things to...
Okay, we have 1 minute, and if anybody has that spread between oil and gas, or what might it mean?
So I'll play players with different risk tolerances to a traditional operator who are going to try and take advantage of that.
This is just for the record. Just videotaping.
That's music.
Sharmali. I had to pinch it.
And I do my introduction.
Okay.
At that time, you will be in there on the lapel mic, or you're already wired up.
Boat is already up there, and I got water on.
And then you got water.
We're all going to have withdrawal symptoms. What do you got?
Ready?
Let's get Gene.
Hold this thing. I'm going to stop.
Add to this bomb crowd.
We have a 5-page pre-sleep checklist big item, and the final item asks 8 questions of oxygen. Now, we did not know how to had a computer restart. The other controller says main bus underload. Third one says antenna. Let's start working this problem. Electrical bus cells 1 and 3. And I say, Si, we better think about that. And he says, nope, fly a direct abort. And this comes as a shock to many of the people because they believe this is the wrong decision. Jim Love on the spacecraft that we're going around the moon, and the discussion with Jim is very short, very intense. And he concurred the Earth and the moon. So Phil Shafts.
I'm going to join a hotel.
And I don't think there's any controllers.
The 2013 Global IIT Conference Houston is 10 times better than the one in New York. Okay.
Ba ba ba
pictures or video.
Who want to give 100 rupees a month from their payroll, they collect it and give it to the NGO, making whatever feedback needs to be given. So, that is the channel we have when we're talking.
That goes to the heart of whole wheel and getting the penalty down to various. The woman leader will be chosen and then they will be given complete freedom.
Thank you.
And Zentech, just to remind you, there are 10 exits along the perimeter of the building. If for some reason there's an emergency, please follow the overhead announcements and make your way towards the exits. We'll start our next session in just a moment after these gentlemen wrap up.
He has some slides prepared. Then ask Spencer.
They all come together and agree to the common process so that we can actually all back into a centralized big data warehouse where we begin along with our IS division.
And the Affordable Care Act is actually only a part of the process. It's probably the spark of it, but it's driven actually by economic forces that are relentless and are very powerful and that simply won't stop. A payment system in American medicine that actually favors variation, favors overutilization, favors spending dollars on things that may actually be a minimal benefit to the patient, and it's the fee-for-service insurance. And as a result, those patients come in for rescue care rather than preventative care at the very end of a very long or predictable course of disease in which they crowd into the emergency departments, which crowd out people who need those emergency departments for conditions that couldn't have been anticipated, unnecessary costs, this 30% that the Institute of Medicine believes is there. It involves coalescing together a group of healthcare providers for the full spectrum of healthcare that dedicates itself
for questions, and I'll get to your questions. Thank you for sending them to me.
In bringing medicine into the digital age. Kelsey Siebold system in the country, particularly for large healthcare organizations, it's about a 30.
The genotype of your tumor will be predictive of which medications you would respond best to and which clinical trials are available around the world.
What were you doing at 4 a.m. sending videos?
We were certainly with all the other sessions that I've been to, the ones that worked the best were the ones where things that we've learned about economic development tend to rise. But what we find is that they don't rise continuously. So what I have here is 4 countries that became rich in the last. It doesn't keep going up. You'll see in every one of these cases, disposable resources that become available to you once you have food, once you have shelter, and things like that. But what we found is that the range where this peak occurs tends to be extremely consistent across rich enough to start to provide a social safety net in terms of retirement, in terms of healthcare, things like that. So that's why you see that peak. And things, 50% of emerging markets in general are in this sweet spot. Now India isn't yet there, so like ours, at different income levels. On the far left, what you see is basically that clearly when you're back in the 1960s and 70s, for every 100 working age people, they needed to support something like 80 people who are either under 50, either the demographics got considerably worse. So the point being that essentially in 1990, that is when they had the best demographic, and since then it is not only deteriorating at a terrible rate, but it's going to continue to do so for quite a long time. I think again, for those of you who study this kind of stuff, you know that Japan and Italy are the 2 countries which have the worst demographic problem. So they have no solution to this problem. They really have an aging population which they can't do very much about, which is why companies like Sony are very interested in that than most developed countries. It is probably the only country, along with Australia and Canada, that can accept immigrants, one-child policy over there, which which means that right now, they have enjoyed this massive demographic dividend, but it is about to end. The interesting thing is that why China, and this is building on this stuff, but who are you going to sell it to? Because remember, China was isolated from the rest of the world. And so the final piece was actually Nixon opening up the American market to China. That was the other key piece that they are developing. Now this is by number of units, not by dollars, because the cars sold in the emerging world are so cheaper. So from a dollar point of view, that would increase. 65-year-olds do not replace the cars.
Will not see light for next couple of decades. So these are very, many parts of the country, as you can see in this map. It's really spread all over. Every single. So this is an example of how this whole thing got triggered. Panvel, as you know, have to face the brunt, and often they have to live in darkness. Typically a bottle 10 kilometers of where they were born. So if they were in a bad part, where there is no resource, that is how it is going to be. In giving substandard quality products. Solar lamps we have been listening about since our childhood. So there is nothing new about solar lamps. The government has also been giving. This is a village in the Brahmaputra river slides. Again, and by letting the local government know about the work, we can reach out. The government of India has been very supportive. As I travel across the country, I have realized that there is tremendous knowledge in
The 2013 Global IIT Conference Houston is 10 times better than the one in New York. Okay.
As we enter the 6th decade of life as an independent republic, he decided that here in India, while we shall have political equality, in our economic, as he said, for the fledgling republic was to ensure that the dissonance created between political equality, that we were a very unequal society then, as we are now, on gender, special provisions for women, based on age, special provisions for children and the aged. A lot of people who came onto the street in the last 2-3 years protesting and with the candidates that we put up. The Supreme Court agreed with their version and directed. What percentage of the voters do you think had opted for? People believe that democracy works. People believe that elections are held, that governments can be changed through the process of the ballot change as quickly as possible. This is something the system has to do.
IIT graduate, which means I'm really thoroughly intended. I think I'm the only one in this room who's probably not an IIT graduate. And India was going to become one of our most important bilateral relationships. And the reason we did it was basically on the same analysis, the demographics, trends. Demographics, India is not going to peak demographically until 2070. Consumer, technical, skilled labor market in the world. If, as folks have said, India gets it right in terms of educating that emerging 10 million graduates from secondary schools each year. That's really the challenge.
I think you have to look at it a little differently. So what I want to do today is to, last few days we've heard a lot of great ideas, to talk a little bit about how we do this. And I'm going to mostly rely on my own experience. I'm a 1973 grad, came to Canada, taught for a year, got my PhD, worked in Toronto for 4 years for Motorola, moved to Boston 84, so I've been in Boston since 84, did a bunch of companies. But I'm going to mostly draw on what I've done over the last 10 years. My university research at about $100 billion a year in federal research. And so the question is, MIT, Stanford, Caltech, they already have a lot of impact, but can you do anything better? And then the technology licensing offices try to peddle those ideas. As opposed to what we've done here is that if people to the marketplace up front, so that as they bake the idea, it's more likely that the idea will have a pull in the marketplace. And so this formula of innovation plus relevance is equal to impact is something I think that applies to any sort of a innovation nurturing environment. That is, if you want to create innovation, if you want to create big ideas, you do have to create a nurturing environment for people because you cannot mandate innovation. So whether it's a think tank, university, or any of these places, where you get a lot of smart people together and put them together and want them to have. We said, what can we do about this in India? And so, social innovation. And so, for social innovation to happen, for innovation to happen, you need a critical mass. So we picked an area, which also happens to be our hometown, north of Bangalore, between Bangalore and Mumbai, which is Hubli, Dharwad. So we chose about 5 districts, and it has about 10 million people. And so it's large enough to have all kinds of issues, like irrigated land, arid land, small towns, small villages, bigger towns. The new idea that you bring to solve the problem does not have to be patentable. The market, if you don't have a very profound idea, if you don't have a huge competitive advantage, if you don't have a patentable technology, it's very hard to compete, get the money and survive. Now, the total number of 1.4 million, there's 1.4 million odd NGOs. But unfortunately, that whole space, both in US and India, is a land of the living dead. Because a non-profit never dies. There's no bankruptcy, there's no mergers and acquisitions, because they can just continue to survive whatever they limp along. Because what happens in the US is that most of the interventions in the US are very expensive, because they, again, they were more than the donor than the people who benefit from it. And so that's it.
Just well done.
Very good. Thank you. First of all, I want to change my Very good. Name of man. You absolutely another record. I think he's broken the record for the maximum amount of sponsorships in any Pan-IIT conference ever, as well as the maximum number of companies that have sponsored Pan-IIT conference. So huge round of applause for Sergey. Toronto teams for regional conference, the secret of your success.
Well, before I play a part in the sponsorship, go to your own companies and see if you can get some money. About the only thing I leave behind is the sponsorship is you have to be realized.
Please go ahead. Very good. So, Sumit Malkan, businessman, all the one great volunteer for the IIT of alumni of Greater Houston, ready to take on any task. But for this conference, you were extremely specific that this is what you wanted to do. So why was that?
We wanted to do something which will have a long-lasting impact. So we wanted to do something which we can continue to work beyond this conference.
So Vinay, always known to be a bit of a behind-the-scenes story. This was about 2 days before the conference.
Show me the money.
There you go. Show me the money.
I'm too short for that.
Your capacity is head of operations.
I think the 3 things I would say is plan your work. Number 1, plan your work. Number 2, walk the plan. And number 3 is, I will elaborate those little bit. Okay, number 3 is your partners in your life. Okay, so plan the work is the 2 different all together. And Sandeep, thank you. Sanjay, thank you. Renu, thank you, and all of this. Please give a big hand to him. I'm only extending my time, but this is very, very
start walking towards you slowly.
I'll do it definitely. I'm passionate, I'm energetic, I'll do it, provided everybody should be in my team the next conference. I get the same advisors, I get the same student volunteers, and of course the Greater Houston
show all yours.
Last but not the least, I want to have this.
Hey.
Oh, you want to talk to her?
No, just send her a text message.
The 2013 Global IIT Conference Houston is 10 times better than the one in New York.
Awesome.
Okay.